like I'm standing up for my rights. So my right, my Fourth Amendment right, says that you cannot seize my identity unless I have been suspected of committing a crime.
Welcome back to Rights Watch, where we take a look at the interactions between people and police to see who's right, who's wrong, and whose side the law is actually on when it comes to exercising your rights. If you ever find yourself in a similar situation, this video features an interaction between police and a man working on private property. And although it starts off rather friendly, it goes off the rails pretty quickly. Let's jump into it.
Okay. Here's your name and badge number.
Matthews, 1163.
1163.
Yep.
Cool.
Can I get your information, please?
So this is rather an interesting way of starting off the interaction. Obviously, this officer is starting in a rather jovial way. She's trying to be friendly, and then immediately turns around and asks this person for his identification instead of continuing on with a normal conversation. So at this point, this has obviously escalated from a purely consensual encounter to something that is a little bit more suspicious. This isn't just a police officer walking down the street and having a nice day. She clearly wants something from this man.
Am I suspected of committing a crime?
I got a call
Okay.
about a suspicious person
Okay.
who is walking up and down the road, approaching houses.
Okay.
I am investigating a potential crime.
Okay.
Are you?
Okay, so at this point, she has explained what she believes to be reasonable articulable suspicion that this person could be involved in a crime. However, it's important to note that nothing she just talked about, walking up and down the street, taking pictures from public places, none of those things are illegal. But what she's trying to imply is that this man is violating potentially one of two statutes. The first one would be window peeping, which is under the Battle Creek Code 618.15. No person shall engage in peeping in windows of any uninhabited place or inhabited place. Or potentially prowling, which is 618.16. No person shall prowl about an alley or the private premises of any other person without the authority or the permission of the owner of such premises. Obviously, walking up and down the public sidewalk doesn't comport with either of those two statutes. And even if she's leaning towards the first one there, the window peeping one, him taking pictures in someone's window from a public place would still be protected activity under the First Amendment.
Are you going to give me your information so that I can investigate?
You suspect me of committing a crime, but I can just tell you that I was on the sidewalk. I was taking pictures of this house for a reason that the owner knows, and that's it.
Okay. Do you have your ID on you?
I'm not going to provide you with ID unless I've committed a crime.
I am investigating a potential crime.
Okay.
Okay, and this is an extremely important note here. She's investigating a potential crime. She doesn't specifically believe that this person was involved or is about to commit a specific crime. She can't even identify which crime it is, which means she generally would not have enough reasonable articulable suspicion to ask this man for his identification.
What crime are you investigating?
In saying that you are taking pictures of more than one house.
Okay.
Okay? It is my job to make sure that you are not casing any houses.
Okay.
All right?
What crime do you suspect me of committing?
I have already explained that to you, sir.
Okay, so it's important to understand that under the the laws of Battle Creek, and as far as I could find in Michigan in general, there's no such thing as casing as a crime. But you would have things like we talked about earlier, like the prowling or peeping or something like that. But again, since he's already explained his activity, she shouldn't have any more suspicion at this point. He's clearly on the property where he should be with the owner of this house. And he's told her why he's there, why he's taking pictures, all of those kinds of things. She hasn't actually articulated a crime at this point. She simply said he's walking up and down the street taking pictures. Perfectly legal activity no matter where you are in the U.S., as long as you are on private property. Whatever you can see, you can photograph. It is important to note that officers, generally speaking, and this may vary from department to department based on their policy, are not required to tell you specifically what crime they suspect you of committing, but it is common sense and a great way to diffuse the situation to say, hey, I have reasonable suspicion of this specific crime. If you can help me dispel that, then we can move on with our days. Instead, she's already asked for the ID, been denied, which is something she apparently is not very used to, judging by the look on her face and her overall demeanor shift when he said no. And that's now the only thing that she is focused on.
Can you articulate a crime?
With information that I'm requesting or not?
No. Are you going to articulate a crime?
I've already explained that to you multiple times.
Yep.
Okay.
So you suspect me of being suspicious?
There was a call of you taking pictures and approaching houses.
It was not.
Okay. Well, that's the call. You've asked me to explain myself, and I'm explaining myself, and I'm explaining why we're investigating. Okay. I'm explaining why you are required to give me your information.
I'm not required to give you identification unless you can reasonably articulate a crime that I have committed. This is not a stop and ID state.
Okay, so this is an important distinction and one place where a lot of people can get caught up. Although generally speaking in Michigan, there is no such thing as stop and ID. Under the Battle Creek statutes, you can actually be charged for hindering if you refuse to identify yourself when you are under what is considered to be reasonable articulable suspicion. So Battle Creek Code 618.30, hindering or opposing police officers, says no person shall, and under subsection 3, refuse to identify himself or herself by name and date of birth when requested by a police officer, where the officer has encountered the person under circumstances which reasonably indicate that the officer believes the person is committing, or is about to commit a violation of local, state, or federal law. So this doesn't give you all of the wiggle room that a lot of other states have, or even most other municipalities in Michigan, where you're under no obligation to identify, period. In Battle Creek, where this interaction is taking place, if it is found in court that this officer does have reasonable articulable suspicion, which again, based on everything we've talked about so far, is highly doubtful, then this person could be convicted of hindering. If we look at the punishments for that, it could be up to 90 days in jail and a $500 fine. So it's important to keep in note that even though your state may not have that as an obligation, local municipalities may have imposed a law like that.
I've already explained that to you. Are you willing to give me your information?
No.
Okay, so you're obstructing an investigation.
I'm not obstructing. Obstructing is a secondary crime that I have to have been committed. I have to be convicted of committing a crime in order to be obstructing.
What part of this are you failing to understand?
I'm not failing to understand anything. I think you're failing to understand.
I'm not.
Okay.
Okay. I'm here for a legitimate reason, and I'm trying to obtain your information so I can verify that you're here for a legal purpose.
Okay.
Okay?
I am here for a legal purpose.
Okay. And what purpose is that?
I am doing an inspection on a house.
Okay. And who do you work for?
Why is that important?
So that I can call and verify that you were here and that you were an employee.
Okay, so if he worked for himself, I'm not sure who she would be calling in this situation, but all she's trying to do here is obtain an alternate route to getting this guy's identification. And quite honestly, this information is irrelevant, but it could help dispel any of the concerns she might still have, although admittedly, those already should be alleviated because he's standing on the property with the property owner who's not saying that he's trespassing or doing anything untoward. And she could ironically just ask the homeowner if he has permission to be there, and that would resolve this entire situation.
Okay. So you want my information to verify that I am here for a legitimate reason. Why wouldn't you ask the homeowner who's standing behind me?
And I can.
Okay.
That's part of my investigation. But right now you're not cooperating with that.
I don't feel that I'm not. I feel that I am cooperating.
We could have already been done and gone with this. Okay. So I'm failing to understand why this is becoming such a process.
Okay, so, and this is where I think both people misunderstand this interaction. She could simply ask the homeowner. She just admitted to that. He could give her his ID, although he's not necessarily legally obligated to. Again, there is the obstruction statute that we talked about a few minutes ago, the hindering and obstruction statute, where if she does have reasonable articulable suspicion that he has committed, or is about to commit a crime, that she could be legally able to obtain his identification. She could also simply just ask the homeowner.
Because it's my rights. Like, I'm standing up for my rights. So my right, my Fourth Amendment right, says that you cannot seize my identity unless I have been I'm suspected of committing a crime. You have yet to articulate with reasonable suspicion a crime that I have committed. I have dispelled, I believe, any evidence of me committing a crime by telling you that I'm here, I am inspecting a house.
Okay.
So what crime have I committed? or do you suspect me of committing?
Can I speak?
Go right ahead.
Okay. As I've explained multiple times, we got a call that said that you were taking pictures and approaching multiple houses. That you are currently at this house. Okay?
Yep.
Entering onto other people's properties.
Not a true statement.
Okay. And I don't know that.
Okay.
Because I have somebody who's saying that that happened.
Okay.
People lie to us all the time.
Yes.
Okay. It's my.
Okay, so this is exactly why she should be conducting an actual investigation, asking the homeowner if he has permission to be there, instead of going down this ID rabbit hole, which, as we've discussed throughout this video, is a little bit of a gray area here.
My job to investigate.
Yep.
And identify people who could be potentially committing crimes in
Yep.
the neighborhood, which in this case is the concern.
Okay.
All right. I need your identification.
No, you don't.
So that I can verify. Okay.
So I would suggest that you talk to the
Am I explaining
complainant.
this wrong?
Can I request supervisor?
Okay, so the laughter here, the nervous laughter by this officer is rather telling. She says, am I explaining this wrong? And the answer is yes. You could either articulate a crime, you could potentially ask the homeowner if he has permission to be there, or you could go down the route where you are going, where you're clearly not going to obtain this man's identification. So you are explaining this wrong because you aren't giving him the crime. Now, there's generally not an obligation to do so legally, but rather than focusing on obtaining this man's identification, you could have already resolved this interaction 4 or 5 other ways. He has, at this point, told you why he's there. He has repeatedly said, asked for the specific crime, and he has given you the option to talk to the homeowner. So the reason that this is still a confusing interaction is because these 2 officers seem only obsessed with getting this guy's ID to fill out the paperwork rather than paying attention and thinking through this process logically.
I'm requesting a supervisor. I'm formally requesting a supervisor, Officer Matthews.
Okay. And I'm formally requesting your information. Not to mention.
Is that a lawful order?
Yes, it is.
No, it's not.
Okay.
You're attempting to use the color of law, which would be violating my rights.
I'm not violating your Fourth Amendment rights.
Yes, you are. You're attempting to. You have not done it yet, but you're attempting to. What's your name and badge number, please?
Right
Is
here.
that how you answer the judge?
It's right here.
That's how you answer the judge? You just point at your...
Right here.
Yeah.
You see her.
So Hickman, and your badge number is?
44. Right
44.
here.
Thank you.
The other concern is that if you are going house to house, which is the call that we got, is that you have to have a license in order to do that. So have you filed a license with the city of Battle Creek?
So that is if I am peddling or panhandling, which I am doing neither of
Which is also what we're trying to identify, right?
Okay.
Which is also.
So at this point, she's now adding additional things, not just you were taking pictures in public and walking up and down the street, potentially looking at a house, but now she's trying to go down the peddling or panhandling route. And although panhandling is typically legal, it's considered an appeal for alms or an appeal for charity and is covered by the First Amendment. There are some restrictions in different locations, and Battle Creek does have a statute that requires people to obtain a license to do these kinds of things. But if he was just simply knocking on doors and asking if he could inspect their houses, for example, he wouldn't necessarily need a license or a certification from the government to be able to do that.
Also a crime.
Okay.
So I do have a legal right to obtain your identification, as I've explained on multiple occasions.
So I am not peddling. Sir, have I solicited you for anything?
Do you understand why this is way more complicated than it needs to be?
Because I'm expressing my rights. I'm exercising my rights.
You're not
That's why it's a problem?
exercising your rights.
I am.
You're not. I've explained the legal right that I have to obtain that information.
No.
And you are
The
obstructing that investigation
secondary crime.
and not allowing me to further
So cite me
investigate.
give me a statute that tells me that you suspect me of committing a crime. Cite the statute.
A statute, sir?
Yes, you have to cite a
I
statute.
don't
You
have
have
to
to
cite-
supply me
I've
with
already
reasonable,
articulated-
articulated suspicion.
Okay, and so this is something we've talked about previously. Again, generally speaking, unless there's a department by department policy, she wouldn't be required to identify the specific statute. she did articulate what she believes is suspicion, right? She has suspicion that he is committing some sort of a crime, but it's not necessarily reasonable and it's not very well articulated, which is the reason that this interaction has gone on for as long as it has.
Of a crime. What is the crime that you suspect me of committing?
I've explained that multiple times. Sir? I don't know how else to explain that to you. Can I talk to you for a second?
Okay, so it finally seems like somebody here is letting smarter, cooler heads prevail, and it appears that the partner of this initial officer is going to try to talk to the homeowner to resolve this entire issue, which is something they could have done 15 minutes ago.
Come in there and talk to you? Yeah. Yeah.
So at this point, just based on that quick conversation with the homeowner, which they could have had at the beginning of this interaction, the interaction is just about over. Obviously, they got all of the information they needed from the homeowner in order to dispel any suspicion that may have been remaining after the person filming told them repeatedly what he was doing.
Michael, you have a good day. Take care.
Can I request the incident number? Officer Matthews, are you not going to provide me with the incident number when I requested it? Or the supervisor when I requested the supervisor?
If you want to talk to somebody, you can call, okay?
Okay, who's your...
I don't want to provide you with your information. I'm not going to provide you with an incident number because I don't know who you are.
What's your...
Okay, so they clearly already know who he is because the other officer just addressed him by his first name as she was leaving. But this officer not only likely violated her policy, but was just out and out rude when she said, I'm not going to provide you with the call number because you didn't bother to tell me who you are. So I can't release that information to you because I can't positively identify you. Obviously, she knows who he is because she got his name from the homeowner. And she knows that he's the person involved in the call because she initiated the stop with him. All in all, this guy did a great job of standing up for his rights. There was a little bit of a gray area there, but nothing to be too worried about as long as you are firm and stand your ground. If you like this breakdown, you'll want to see this video right here, where two police officers chase down a young man on the side of the road for expressing his freedom of speech a bit too colorlessly.